They didn't trade her for gold. They didn't trade her for cattle. They traded her for a bullet and a sack of cornmeal. That was the price of Nia's worth to her people. It happened on a night without stars, when the village ran out of water and out of mercy. She had once refused the war chief's son, said no to becoming property wrapped in feathers and false honor. That alone was enough. No trial, no voice. Just hands in the dark dragging her from her tent, bare feet scraping the dry earth. No one daring to meet her eyes. Not even the old women. They tied her. They handed her over like a broken tool. Now she sat hunched in a rusted cage parked in the center of Canyon Hollow, another dusty western town drunk on power and sweat. Her knees were pulled to her chest, ribs showing, her torn deerskin dress barely clinging to her body. Her lips were split. Her eyes, sunken but fierce, no longer blinked at the jeers. $5 for the fresh Apache girl, the showman barked. Strong, shapely, unspoiled. Hands reached toward the bars like she was an animal. Men laughed. One mimed what he'd do if he had her alone. She didn't flinch. She didn't look up. Looking up invited worse. What shattered her wasn't the hunger or humiliation. It was knowing her own people did this. Knowing that silence had betrayed her long before the chains ever touched her skin. She was 24 years old and already abandoned by every name she once trusted. And in that cracked little cage with heat pressing down and voices tearing at what was left of her, Nia made a quiet promise. I will survive this, but I will never belong to anyone again. Nia had made her vow in silence, teeth clenched behind chapped lips, curled in the back of a rusted cage. But vows don't stop suffering. The heat pressed down like a punishment. Around her, the crowd thickened. Miners, drifters, men with sunburned skin and broken morals. They hooted and spat, baited the showman, offering flasks, knives, even a sack of jerky in exchange for her. Each offer stripped away another layer of her humanity. The showman laughed, barked like a carnival hawker. $5, boys. That's all for a wild one like this. You ain't gonna find better for cheaper. Look at her. Strong hips, clean teeth, still got fight in her. Nia stopped hearing the words. She'd heard them too many times already, every town the wagon had rolled through. Words like breed, pet, wild thing. But what she couldn't block out were the eyes. Dozens of them. Staring through the bars like they had every right. Staring like she was meat hanging in the sun. And then, one pair didn't. He stood half in shadow, leaning against a hitching post near the general store. Tall, coat draped, face weathered and silent. He didn't stare. He didn't smirk. He just watched, still as bone, eyes hidden beneath the brim of a wide hat. But she saw him, and he saw her. Not her legs, not her dress, her. Wade Coulter wasn't there to be a hero. He came for wire, nails, oats. He'd left his voice behind years ago with the grave of his wife and son. Since the war, the man barely spoke at all. But somehow, something in her shattered stare cracked through all his silence. He stepped off the post. She noticed. Couldn't help it. Her eyes met his, and that was the first time she let herself hope in days. She didn't even mean to speak, but the words slipped out, raw and desperate. They sold me like I was nothing. Please, save me. And somehow, he heard her. He didn't shout, didn't argue. He reached into his duster pocket and flipped a gold coin through the air. It clinked into the showman's dirty palm like thunder. "5," Wade said. The first word he'd spoken since dawn. The crowd jeered. "You buying a pet or a bed warmer?" someone shouted. Wade didn't respond. Didn't even look at them. He walked straight to the wagon. The key hung on a nail. He took it, opened the cage himself. Nia didn't move. She was used to hands grabbing, yanking, hurting, but Wade didn't reach for her. He took off his coat, long, heavy, weather-worn, and held it out. No orders, no threats, just offered. It took her a moment to believe it was real. When she finally reached for it, her hands shook. She wrapped it around her, coarse fabric, pine-scented, warm, and followed him. She stumbled once. He stopped, gave her time, then helped her mount behind him, careful not to touch more than needed. The crowd behind them mocked, spat, But Wade didn't turn back. He nudged the reins. The horse turned west, and just like that, Nia left the cage behind. She didn't know his name, didn't know where they were going, but the wind tasted different outside those bars. She clung to his coat. It smelled of earth and smoke, and it felt like something she hadn't felt in a long time. Safety. They rode for hours in silence. No words, no rush. She rested her cheek against his back, eyes closed. Her body still ached, but the pain had changed. Now, it had somewhere to go. By the time the town shrank behind them, she knew this. Whatever waited out west, desert, wolves, death, it couldn't be worse than what she'd left. Because at least now, she was riding toward something. Not just being dragged away. When the cabin came into view, small, lonely, half hidden in the trees, Nia didn't know what to expect. Another cage? Another man with kind eyes and cruel hands? But Wade didn't make demands. He didn't speak unless needed. He drew her a basin of water, gave her food, left her space. When she hesitated, he backed away. When she reached for the well, he didn't watch. He didn't try to own her. That was the part that shook her the most. That night, when he laid a blanket by the door and left the bed to her, she didn't sleep right away. She stared at the ceiling, jaw tight, heart pounding. No one had ever given her space before. No one had left a door open without standing in it. She locked it. Not because she feared him, but because, for the first time in a long time, she had something worth locking the world out for. If this part of the story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video if you believe in stories that heal. Subscribe to join us for more powerful Wild West tales that honor survival, dignity, and love. And share this with someone who believes in second chances. Because sometimes, all it takes to save someone is being the first to stop and listen. The first night passed without sleep. Nia lay on the cabin floor near the bed, wrapped in Wade's coat, the wool blanket resting lightly over her shoulders. Though the mattress stood empty, clean, and wide, she didn't dare touch it. It felt like sacred ground. Too much, too soon. She needed space not just to rest, but to remember how to exist. And he gave her that. Wade never knocked, never hovered. He stayed out back under the porch awning, cold air cutting through his coat. But he didn't complain, didn't pace, didn't expect anything. It wasn't silence born of avoidance. It was respect. At dawn, when the wind howled through the gaps in the roof, she stirred beneath the blanket, bones aching. She sat up slowly, careful not to make noise. Her ribs still hurt from the bars, her wrists raw from the bindings the showman used. Her dress clung to her like a second wound, the torn collar brushing against her chest. She pulled the coat tighter and rose to her feet. Through the window, she saw him, splitting wood with the same rhythm as a man saying prayer. Swing, crack, drop. His arms moved with practiced grace, not fury. She watched him a while just to see if he'd glance toward her. He didn't, not once. She wasn't used to that. Men always looked, measured, waited. But Wade didn't carry himself like he wanted to own anything. Not land, not cattle, not her. Inside the cabin, she began moving carefully. She added logs to the fire the way he had, pumped water at the well. Her hands shook from the cold, but it felt real, like something that belonged to her again. Later that morning, Wade returned, boots heavy with frost. He said nothing, just nodded toward the chair. She sat slowly. He poured beans into a pot, added bits of smoked meat, water. Every movement was deliberate. Every silence between them felt earned, not awkward. She watched his hands, large, calloused, gentle in their own way. When he finally spoke, his voice rasped low. "You got a name?" She hesitated, unsure, but then she nodded. "Nia." He nodded back. "Wade. Wade Coulter." It was the first conversation they had, and it was enough. As the stew cooked, she traced the wood grain of the table with one finger. There were things she wanted to ask. Why did you buy me? What do you want from me? Am I expected to repay you? But she didn't ask, and he didn't explain. After they ate, slow, quiet, measured bites, he stood, pulled on a second coat, grabbed gloves and rope. "I'll be down at the south fence," he said. "If you're cold, firewood's behind the stove. You're safe here." He paused at the door. "I don't lock it." Then he left. She stood there a long while, unmoving, letting the words hang in the air. "You're safe here." It didn't feel real, but it also didn't feel like a lie. Throughout the day, she wandered the small cabin, her feet careful not to leave marks. She didn't open drawers, didn't touch his tools. But she found a cloth and began wiping the table. Not because she was told to, not out of obligation, because she needed to do something that wasn't about surviving. By the time the sun dipped behind the trees, casting the walls in amber light, Wade returned. He dropped gloves near the porch, wiped sweat from his brow. Nia met him at the door with a small nod. Later that night, he handed her another blanket, set it on the floor near the stove. Then he turned toward the bed. "You take it tonight," he said. She froze, her chest tightened. "I'll sleep out back," he added quickly. "Dry spot, under the roof." She opened her mouth, unsure what words were supposed to come next. He looked at her, not with pity, not hunger, but a kind of quiet understanding. "I ain't like them," he said, his voice rough. "I didn't buy you for that." Then he picked up his coat, his blanket, and walked out the door. She stared at the wood grain of the floor, at the fire, at the way he had left it cracked slightly open. Not wide, just enough to say, "If you need to, you can." That night, she lay on the bed. She didn't sleep. Not right away. But when her body finally gave in, it was the deepest sleep she'd had in months. And when morning came, she didn't think about running. The next few days passed not with big changes, but with a string of quiet revolutions. She learned where he kept the flour. She stirred stew without being asked. She folded the blanket every morning and left it by the door. He noticed, but didn't comment, and that made her trust him more. One afternoon, she asked, voice low, "Do you want me to leave when I'm stronger?" He looked at her from across the porch, wind brushing his coat aside. "No," he said. "Just that." Later, she found an old saddlebag behind the lean-to. The leather was dry-rotted, seams broken. She asked if she could fix it. "You sure?" he asked. "I fixed worse," she said. And that's how it began, not with declarations, but with labor. Shared work, quiet meals, a routine. Nia began walking through the cabin like she belonged there. Not loudly, not boldly, but with a kind of soft claim. She swept the floor, fed the chickens, repaired what was broken. Wade started leaving tools out in the open. He left the door unlatched while he worked the ridge. His movements softened, not out of comfort, but out of trust. There was no need to ask anymore if she was expected to stay. She already had. It was the rhythm that saved her. Not a grand gesture, not a rescue on horseback. Just the rhythm of routine. The scraping of Wade's boots against the floorboards at dawn, the clink of tin mugs, the soft groan of the wind pressing through cracks in the cabin wall. Nia learned to match her breath to those sounds, to feel anchored in their quiet repetitions. She no longer startled when he moved, no longer paused before reaching for a plate or opening the door. Her body, once tight with readiness to flee, began to soften. The bruises around her wrists faded. The worst of the swelling in her ankles eased. Her steps grew steadier. Every morning she swept the floor. Every afternoon she mended something. His coat pocket, a saddle strap, the fraying edge of the quilt. He never asked her to, never expected it. That made it matter more. And still he hadn't touched her. Not once. He looked. He was a man, not a ghost. But when her shirt slipped too far, or the wind pressed fabric close to her chest, his eyes would flick away, jaw tightening slightly. Not out of repression, but restraint. It made her feel safe in a way she had forgotten was possible. One evening, colder than most, she sat near the fire mending the hem of her dress, the same torn one she'd arrived in. Wade was at the table, stirring coffee he wasn't drinking. The fire crackled between them. He spoke first. "You got anyone that might come looking?" His voice wasn't suspicious. It was something quieter. Something like, concern. She shook her head slowly. No one, not even my people. They sold me for cornmeal, Wade. I'm not one of them anymore. He didn't push, didn't say sorry, just sat with that truth like a stone between them. Later that night, as the wind moaned low through the trees, he nodded toward the bed again. You take it tonight? She hesitated. I'll sleep out back, he added, under the porch roof. She opened her mouth, struggling to name the feeling rising in her chest. He'd bought her, fed her, protected her. Now he was giving up his bed. I didn't save you for that, he said, sensing her conflict. I ain't like them. And he walked out. That night, she curled into the mattress slowly, the wool blanket tight around her. The fire faded to embers. She didn't cry, not exactly. But something broke inside her, a wall built long before the cage, a wall she didn't even know had a name. In the morning, she didn't hesitate to move. She didn't flinch when she heard him splitting wood. She put on his old shirt, cinched the belt at her waist, and went to the stove to make coffee. She didn't ask if she was allowed. By mid-morning, they were hauling crates from the back field together. Potatoes, carrots, cold dirt clung to her sleeves, her knees. Wade worked beside her, quietly, checking her pace but never correcting her. When her fingers went numb, he offered his gloves. She shook her head. By noon, they were both flushed from the cold, breathing fog into the air, covered in dust and root soil. And it felt good. She watched him later as he repaired the barn door, hammer moving with slow rhythm. The man never wasted movement, never talked when silence would do. And somehow, that steadiness became her shelter. That night, as they ate, she watched his hands, large, scarred, steady. After dinner, when he reached for his coat to sleep outside again, she reached out without thinking and placed her hand on his wrist. Thank you, she said softly. He didn't pull away. I didn't save you, he said. I just opened the cage. She looked at him then, really looked. You gave me the first night. I didn't want to run. His jaw shifted. He didn't speak. But something in his face let go. A breath held for years. That night, they stayed in the same room, still clothed, still apart. But they stayed. And that alone meant everything. Days passed. The snow came. Not a flurry, but a blanket. Thick and soft, muffling the world. Nia woke to white silence and the scent of coffee already hot. Wade had risen early, shoveled a path to the well, and was now outside, hauling wood. She stepped out in the coat he'd lined with fur for her, breath fogging in the sharp air. You'll wear yourself out, she said. He looked up. Won't get easier if I wait. She grabbed the second shovel and stepped beside him. Then don't wait alone. They dug together, the crunch of snow beneath their boots the only sound. Later, as they shared the warmth of the fire, a knock came. Slow. Heavy. 3 raps. Wade froze. Nia did too. He reached for the rifle behind the stove. Nia moved silently to the side wall near the basin, not hiding, just ready. When Wade opened the door, a man stood outside. Heavy coat, rifle slung, snow in his beard. Evening, the man said. Looking for a woman, Apache. Maybe goes by Nia. Wade didn't blink. You her? No. You hiding something? No. Can I take a look around? No. The silence was sharp enough to draw blood. Finally, the man nodded. Appreciate the time. Wade didn't move until he vanished into the trees. When the door closed, Nia stepped from the shadows. Do you think he'll come back? Wade looked at her. Maybe, or send someone else. She nodded. What do we do? We stay ready. She stepped closer. We don't run? He met her eyes. Number? We don't run. That night, they lay together in the dark. Not from fear, not from shame, but from something earned. And for the first time in years, Wade Coulter slept beside someone who hadn't already left. And Nia? She no longer dreamed of cages. The snow didn't stop. It thickened. By morning, the cabin was buried past the window ledges, and the pasture had disappeared under a smooth, white sheet. Wade was already outside with a shovel before Nia opened her eyes. The fire had burned low in the stove, but it was still alive, like everything in this place, bruised, but breathing. She rose from the bed they now shared, pulled his fur-lined coat tight around her, and stepped onto the porch. He didn't turn to look at her, just kept working. She knew why. He didn't expect help, but always made space for it. Without a word, she grabbed the second shovel and joined him. Their breath fogged in the air, boots sinking deep. They didn't talk. They didn't need to. Each scoop of snow felt like a vow. When the path to the well was clear, she looked at him and smiled. "Used to hate the cold," she said. "Still do," he answered, smirking slightly. That afternoon, while he repaired the barn latch, she mended the old quilt by the fire. The sky outside stayed gray and heavy. Inside, it was warm, steady, home. And then, just as dinner settled between them, another knock came. 3 knocks. Slow. Intentional. Wade rose immediately, jaw tight. He reached for the rifle, eyes flicking toward her. Nia was already moving, grabbing the revolver he'd given her just days earlier. She stood by the side wall, not hiding. "Ready?" Wade opened the door. This time, the man on the porch wasn't a stranger. His coat was long and black, his eyes cautious but kind. He carried no weapon in hand, only a pendant carved from bone. Nia gasped. Her fingers reached for the one she kept buried in her satchel. Identical. Her bloodline. "Caton," she whispered. Her cousin stepped forward, his voice low. "They're not hunting you anymore. The traitor who marked you is dead. The bounty's gone. No one's coming." The words landed like thunder and melted something inside her. Freedom hadn't knocked to take her away. It had come to let her stay. He left the next morning with only a nod and a message for Wade. "She chose to stay with you. That means something. Treat her right." "I already do," Wade answered. Spring came early that year. The land softened. The trees budded. The wind lost its bite. And with the thaw came something new, something unspoken. One morning, Nia took his hand and pressed it gently to her stomach. "I think we made something," she whispered. Wade stilled, and then he breathed. "We'll raise them right," he said. By summer, the cabin had a second room. The chicken coop held 6 hens, and on the porch post, carved with Wade's hunting knife, were 2 initials, W+N. Not for ownership, for memory. Because what began in a cage and cost $5 in a town full of cruelty had become something no money could buy. A home. A love that never asked, but always stayed. If this story touched you, don't let it end here. Like this video to support powerful stories that honor survival and dignity. Subscribe to our channel for more cinematic Western tales grounded in resilience and hope. And share this with someone who believes in second chances, because sometimes that's all it takes to start a new life. We'll see you on the next trail.